Sarah Martinez walked through the front door of Romano's Italian restaurant at exactly 10:30 in the morning, just like she did every Tuesday through Saturday. She tied her black apron around her waist and checked her reflection in the small mirror by the staff room. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun. Her white shirt was clean and pressed. She looked exactly like what she was supposed to be. A waitress. Nothing more, nothing less. She had worked at Romano's for 3 years now. 3 years of carrying plates, filling water glasses, and smiling at customers who rarely looked at her face. She knew the menu by heart. She knew that Table 7 always ordered the chicken parmesan. She knew that Table 12 wanted their coffee refilled every 10 minutes. She knew that most people never bothered to read the name tag pinned to her apron. Sarah was 34 years old, but sometimes she felt much older. Her hands were rough from washing dishes when the kitchen staff fell behind. Her feet ached every night from standing for 8-hour shifts. Her lower back had a constant dull pain that never quite went away. This was her life now, and she had accepted it a long time ago. The lunch shift started at 11. Sarah checked her tables, made sure the salt and pepper shakers were full, and arranged the napkins just the way Tony liked them. Tony Romano owned the restaurant. He was a good boss, fair and kind, but he was always busy. He worried about bills and food costs and keeping customers happy. He never asked his staff about their lives outside the restaurant. Sarah preferred it that way. At 11:15, the first customers arrived. An elderly couple Sarah had seen many times before. They sat in booth 7, the same booth they always chose. The woman had white hair and wore a pink cardigan. The man used a cane and walked slowly. Sarah brought them water and menus, even though she knew they would order the same thing they always did. "What can I get you today?" Sarah asked with a smile. "I'll have the chicken parmesan," the woman said without looking at the menu. "And I'll take the lasagna," the man added. Sarah wrote down their order and walked to the kitchen. She clipped the paper to the wire above the cooking station and grabbed 2 baskets of bread. When she returned to booth 7, the elderly couple was holding hands across the table. They were talking quietly, looking into each other's eyes. Sarah placed the bread basket between them and refilled their water. They didn't notice her. People rarely did. More customers came in as the lunch hour continued. A group of women who met every Tuesday for lunch. They talked loudly and laughed often. A businessman in a gray suit who ate alone while typing on his laptop. 2 construction workers still wearing their work boots, dirt on their jeans. A young mother with a baby in a stroller and a toddler who wouldn't sit still. Sarah moved between the tables like a ghost. She appeared when people needed something and disappeared when they didn't. She could read body language better than most people could read books. A glance at an empty glass meant they wanted more water. A fork placed at an angle on the plate meant they were finished eating. A hand raised slightly meant they needed the check. By 2 o'clock, the lunch rush was over. Only a few customers remained, finishing their coffee and dessert. Sarah wiped down the empty tables and reset them for the dinner shift. Her feet hurt. Her shoulders were tight. But she had 4 more hours before her shift ended. She walked to the staff room and sat down for her break. 15 minutes. That's all she got. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through social media without really paying attention. Pictures of people on vacation. Pictures of friends getting married. Pictures of lives that seemed so different from hers. She put the phone away and closed her eyes. Sarah thought about going home. Her apartment was small, just 1 room really, with a tiny bathroom and a kitchen that was barely big enough to turn around in. But it was hers, and she had made it comfortable. She had plants on the windowsill. She had books stacked on the floor because she didn't have room for a bookshelf. And she had her keyboard. The keyboard sat between her bed and the wall in the only space where it would fit. It wasn't a real piano. It was a digital keyboard with weighted keys. Bought secondhand from a music store 5 years ago. Sarah had saved for 6 months to buy it. It wasn't much, but when she played it, she could close her eyes and pretend she was somewhere else. Pretend she was someone else. Pretend that her life had turned out differently. Nobody at the restaurant knew about her keyboard. Nobody knew that she played it every single night before going to sleep. Nobody knew that music was the only thing that made her feel alive. And nobody knew about her past. About who she used to be before she became invisible. Sarah's break ended. She stood up, stretched her back, and returned to the dining room. The afternoon was quiet. Only 3 tables had customers. She refilled coffee cups and brought extra napkins and cleared plates. The hours passed slowly. the way they always did between lunch and dinner. At 4 o'clock, Maria arrived for the evening shift. Maria was 23, always cheerful, always talking. She wore bright lipstick and had her nails painted different colors. She treated every customer like a long-lost friend. Sarah envied her energy but also found it exhausting. "Hey, Sarah," Maria said as she tied her apron. "Busy day?" "Lunch was steady," Sarah replied. "It should pick up again around 6. Did you see that Tony bought a piano?" "It's being delivered today?" Sarah felt something twist in her chest. "A piano?" "Yeah. He wants to make the place more fancy. You know, attract richer customers. He's talking about hiring someone to play on weekends." Maria pulled out her phone and showed Sarah a picture. "Look at this one. It's beautiful, right?" The picture showed a baby grand piano, dark mahogany wood, elegant curves. Even in the photo, Sarah could tell it was a quality instrument. The kind of piano she used to play, the kind she hadn't touched in 12 years. "It's nice," Sarah said quietly. "Nice? It's gorgeous. I wish I could play piano. That would be so cool." Maria put her phone away. "Anyway, I'm taking tables 9 through 15. You got the rest, right?" Sarah nodded. Her mind was still on the piano. A real piano. Here in the restaurant where she worked every day, the thought made her feel strange. Excited and sad at the same time, the dinner shift began. More customers arrived. Families with children, couples on dates, groups of friends celebrating birthdays. Sarah moved through her routine automatically. Her body knew what to do without her mind having to think about it. Order food. Bring drinks. Clear plates. Smile. Repeat. At 6:30, she heard a commotion at the front door. A delivery truck had parked outside. 2 men in blue uniforms were wheeling something large through the entrance. Tony rushed over, directing them toward the space near the front window. Sarah stopped what she was doing and watched. The piano. It was even more beautiful in person than in the picture. The wood gleamed under the restaurant lights. The men carefully positioned it in the corner, angling it so diners could see it from most tables. They removed the protective blankets and padding. Tony stood back, hands on his hips, admiring his purchase. "What do you think?" He called out to the staff and customers. "Adds some class to the place, doesn't it?" People murmured their approval. A few customers took pictures with their phones. Maria squealed with delight and rushed over to look at it more closely. Sarah stayed where she was, frozen in place. The piano seemed to call to her. She could almost feel the smooth keys under her fingers. She could almost hear the music that could come from it. Her hands actually trembled. She gripped her order pad tighter and forced herself to turn away. She had tables to serve, work to do, no time for silly dreams. But for the rest of the shift, Sarah found her eyes drifting to the piano again and again. It sat there unused, elegant and silent like a beautiful sculpture. Tony had already left for the night. The delivery men had gone. The piano waited. The restaurant closed at 10 o'clock. Sarah helped with the final cleanup, wiping tables and sweeping floors. Maria left first, waving goodbye and talking on her phone. The kitchen staff finished and headed out. Soon it was just Sarah and Frank, the cook who always worked the closing shift. "You heading out?" Frank asked as he turned off the lights in the kitchen. "In a minute," Sarah said. "I just need to finish up a few things." Frank nodded and left through the back door. Sarah heard his car start in the parking lot. Then silence. The restaurant was empty except for her. She stood in the middle of the dining room looking at the piano. She shouldn't. She knew she shouldn't. It wasn't hers to touch. Tony would probably be angry. But her feet carried her forward anyway, one step at a time until she stood right next to it. The piano was perfect. Not a scratch on it. The bench was padded leather, comfortable and sturdy. Sarah reached out and touched the wood, running her fingers along the smooth surface. It was cool to the touch, real, solid. She looked around the empty restaurant. No one would know. Just for a minute. Just to see if it was in tune. Just to feel the keys one more time. Sarah sat down on the bench. Her heart was beating fast. She felt like she was doing something forbidden, something dangerous. She lifted the fallboard that covered the keys. They were perfect. 88 keys, black and white, arranged in the pattern she had memorized as a child. She placed her right hand on the keys. Middle C. Her index finger pressed down gently. The note rang out clear and pure in the empty restaurant. It was in tune. Perfectly in tune. Sarah pulled her hand back like she had touched something hot. The sound of the piano in the silence had startled her. It was so beautiful, so painful. It reminded her of everything she had lost. She stood up quickly and closed the fallboard. She grabbed her purse and her jacket. She needed to leave before she did something stupid, before the memories came flooding back, before she remembered who she used to be. Sarah locked the front door and walked to her car. The night air was cool. The parking lot was empty except for her old sedan. She sat in the driver's seat but didn't start the engine right away. Her hands were still shaking. She drove home through quiet streets. Her apartment building was dark except for a few windows. She climbed the stairs to the third floor and unlocked her door. Inside, everything was exactly as she had left it. Small, simple, safe. Sarah changed out of her work clothes and washed her face. She should go to bed. She had to work again tomorrow. But she sat down at her keyboard instead. She turned it on and put on her headphones. The neighbors complained if she played too loud after 10. Her fingers found the keys. She started with scales, warming up the way she had been taught so many years ago. Then she played a simple piece. Moonlight Sonata, Beethoven. She had learned it when she was 15 years old. As she played, Sarah closed her eyes. For these few minutes, she wasn't a waitress. She wasn't tired or invisible or forgotten. She was who she used to be. Who she was supposed to be. Before everything changed. Before her mother got sick. Before the hospital bills piled up. Before she had to quit school and find work. Before music became something she could only do in secret, late at night when no one was watching. Sarah played until her fingers were tired. Then she turned off the keyboard, took off her headphones and climbed into bed. Tomorrow she would go back to Romano's. Tomorrow she would carry plates and fill water glasses and smile at customers who didn't see her. And tomorrow, that beautiful piano would be sitting there, waiting, silent, untouched. She fell asleep thinking about it, about the way the keys had felt under her fingers, about the perfect, pure sound of that single note, about all the music locked inside that instrument, waiting for someone to set it free. The piano sat in the corner of Romano's for 2 weeks without making a single sound. It became part of the furniture, something pretty to look at, but never used. Customers asked about it sometimes. They wanted to know if someone would play it. Tony would smile and say he was working on it, looking into hiring a pianist for weekend evenings. But Sarah knew the truth. She heard Tony on the phone with music agencies. She heard him ask about prices. She saw his face when they told him how much professional pianists charged. $200 for a Friday night, $300 for Saturday, plus a cut of any tips. It was too expensive. The piano would stay silent. Sarah tried not to look at it. She tried to focus on her work, but the piano pulled at her attention like a magnet. Every time she walked past it, her fingers would twitch. Every time she cleared a nearby table, she would glance at the keys. Sometimes late at night, after the restaurant closed, she would stand next to it. Just stand there, looking, wanting, remembering. She never sat down to play it again. That one time had been enough. That one note had opened a door in her heart that she had worked so hard to keep closed. Playing more would only make the ache worse. So she kept her distance, even though it hurt. On a Thursday evening, the restaurant was busier than usual. A local company was having a retirement party in the back room. 20 people, all dressed nicely, all ordering expensive wine and appetizers. Sarah and Maria were both working, along with another waitress named Jennifer. Sarah was carrying a tray of drinks to table 9 when she heard someone ask about the piano. She turned to see a well-dressed man in his 50s pointing at it. "That's a beautiful instrument," he said to Tony, who was walking past. "Do you have entertainment here?" Tony shook his head. "Not yet. I'm still looking for the right person." "What a shame," the man said. "A piano like that should be played. It's almost criminal to let it sit silent." Sarah felt those words like a punch to her stomach. Criminal. Yes. That's exactly what it was. All that potential for beauty, locked away. All that music, unheard. She knew exactly how that piano felt. She delivered the drinks and returned to the kitchen. Her hands were shaking again. She needed to calm down. It was just a piano, just an object. It didn't matter, but it did matter. It mattered more than she wanted to admit. The evening continued. Sarah served food and cleared plates and brought desserts. The retirement party was loud and happy. People were laughing and telling stories. At one point, they sang happy birthday to someone. Their voices were off-key and enthusiastic. Sarah smiled as she listened, but inside, she felt hollow. Around 9 o'clock, most of the customers had left. Only a few tables remained, people finishing their coffee and lingering over conversation. Tony had gone home early, trusting the staff to close up. Maria was in the back room helping clean up after the party. Jennifer had left at 8. The kitchen staff was finishing their work. Sarah was wiping down a table near the piano when an old woman approached her. The woman had silver hair and wore a purple dress with a pearl necklace. She looked elegant, like someone who had lived an interesting life. "Excuse me, dear," the woman said. "May I ask you something?" "Of course," Sarah replied. "Do you need anything else? More coffee?" No, I'm fine." The woman smiled. "I was just wondering about that piano. Does anyone ever play it?" Sarah shook her head. "Not yet. The owner is looking for someone." "What a pity." The woman walked over to the piano and ran her hand along its surface, the same way Sarah had done. "I used to play when I was younger. I wasn't very good, but I loved it. Music has a way of feeding the soul, doesn't it?" Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. "Yes," she said quietly. "It does." "Do you play?" the woman asked, looking at Sarah with sharp, knowing eyes. The question caught Sarah off guard. She opened her mouth to say no, to lie, to keep her secret safe. But something about the woman's kind face made her tell the truth instead. "I used to," Sarah said. "A long time ago." "Why did you stop?" "Life got in the way." The woman nodded slowly, like she understood. "Life has a way of doing that. But you know what I've learned in my 78 years? It's never too late to find your way back to the things you love. Never too late." She patted Sarah's hand and walked away, leaving a generous tip on her table. Sarah watched her go, feeling something shift inside her chest, something warm and uncomfortable and hopeful. That night, after everyone had left, Sarah found herself standing by the piano again. The restaurant was completely empty. The lights were dimmed. Outside, the street was quiet. She could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Nothing else. Sarah sat down at the bench. Her heart was pounding. She was breaking the rules. This wasn't her piano. She had no right to touch it. But her hands moved to the keys anyway. She didn't plan what to play. She just let her fingers find their own way. They landed on a piece by Chopin, a nocturne, slow and beautiful and sad. She had learned it in college, back when she was a music student, back when she practiced 8 hours a day and dreamed of concert halls. The music flowed out of her like water from a dam that had finally broken. Her eyes closed. Her body swayed slightly with the melody. Everything else disappeared. The restaurant, her tired feet, her worries, her regrets. There was only the music. She didn't hear the door to the kitchen open. She didn't see Maria standing there frozen in place. Maria had come back because she forgot her phone. She had walked into the kitchen and heard the music. At first, she thought Tony had turned on a recording. But then she saw Sarah at the piano. Maria pulled out her phone and started recording. Her hands were shaking. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Sarah, quiet Sarah who barely spoke, was playing the piano like a professional, like someone from a concert hall. The music was so beautiful it made Maria's eyes water. Sarah moved from Chopin to another piece. Something by Debussy, Clair de Lune. Maria knew this one. Her mother used to play it on her record player when Maria was a child. But she had never heard it sound like this. So delicate. So perfect. Outside on the street, people started to stop. A couple walking their dog paused by the window. They could hear the music through the glass. They moved closer, trying to see inside. An older man walking home from work stopped and listened. A group of teenagers on their way to a late movie stood still, their conversation dying away. One by one, people gathered outside Romano's window. They pressed their faces to the glass. They pulled out their phones to record. They stood in silence, captivated by the music coming from inside. Sarah played for 15 minutes, maybe longer. She lost track of time. She played pieces she had memorized years ago, pieces she thought she had forgotten. But her fingers remembered everything. Her body remembered. The music had been inside her all along, just waiting to come out. When she finally played the last note of Clair de Lune, she opened her eyes and gasped. Maria was standing 5 feet away, tears running down her face. She was holding her phone, recording. And outside the window, a crowd of at least 15 people stood watching. They were all staring at her. For a moment, nobody moved. Silence filled the restaurant. Then Maria started clapping. The sound was loud in the quiet space. Outside, the crowd joined in. Sarah could hear them through the glass, their hands beating together in appreciation. Sarah stood up quickly, her face burning with embarrassment. "Maria, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have— Are you kidding?" Maria's voice was high and excited. "Sarah, that was amazing. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Why didn't you tell me you could play like that?" I haven't played in a long time. You have to show Tony. He's looking for a pianist and you're right here." "No." Sarah shook her head firmly. "No, I can't. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have touched his piano." "A mistake?" "Sarah, you just gave a free concert to like 20 people. Look at them." Sarah looked at the window. The crowd was still there, some of them trying to open the door, probably wanting to come in and talk to her. She felt panic rising in her throat. This was too much. Too many people seeing her. Too much attention. "I have to go," Sarah said, grabbing her purse from the staff room. "Please don't tell Tony about this. Please, Maria." "But Sarah—" "Please." Maria looked at her friend's frightened face and nodded slowly. "Okay, if that's what you want." Sarah rushed out the back door, avoiding the crowd at the front. She got in her car and drove home with her hands gripping the steering wheel too tight. Her heart was racing. What had she done? She had played Tony's piano without permission. She had drawn attention to herself. She had opened herself up to questions she didn't want to answer. At home, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the music, about how good it had felt to play a real piano again, about the look on Maria's face, about the crowd outside the window. Part of her felt alive for the first time in years, but another part felt terrified. What if Tony found out? What if he was angry? What if people started asking questions about her past? What if they found out she had failed, that she had gone to Juilliard, one of the best music schools in the world, and then quit? That she had thrown away an opportunity most musicians would kill for? She couldn't face that shame again. She couldn't face the disappointment in people's eyes when they realized she had wasted her talent. Better to stay invisible. Better to keep her head down and do her job and play her little keyboard in her tiny apartment where no one could see her fail. But the next morning, Sarah woke up to text messages. Lots of them. From Maria, from Jennifer, from Frank the cook, from people she barely knew. Maria's first message said, "Sarah, you're famous." The next one had a link. Sarah clicked on it with shaking hands. It was Maria's video. The video of her playing the piano at Romano's, posted on the restaurant's social media page. And it had thousands of views, thousands. The comments were full of praise. Who is this woman? This is incredible. I'm driving to this restaurant tonight to hear her play. Best thing I've seen all week. Sarah felt sick. She called Maria. I'm sorry. Maria answered immediately. I know you said not to tell Tony, but Sarah, I couldn't help it. I posted the video last night and it just blew up. People love it. Tony saw it this morning and he's so excited. He wants to talk to you. Please don't be mad. Sarah wasn't mad. She was terrified. What does he want? She asked quietly. He wants you to play at the restaurant. He says you can do it 3 nights a week and he'll reduce your waitressing hours but keep your pay the same. Plus you can keep tips from a tip jar by the piano. Sarah, this is amazing. It wasn't amazing. It was a nightmare. Sarah thanked Maria and hung up. She sat on her bed staring at her phone, watching the view count on the video climb higher and higher. She was supposed to work today. She was supposed to show up at 10:30 like always. But how could she face Tony? How could she face all those people who now had expectations? They thought she was talented. They thought she was special. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know she was a failure who had given up on her dreams because things got hard. Sarah spent an hour sitting on her bed, frozen with fear. Then she looked at her keyboard, squeezed into the small space in her apartment. She looked at her work uniform hanging on the back of the door. She thought about the old woman in the purple dress. It's never too late to find your way back to the things you love. Maybe it was too late. Maybe she had missed her chance years ago. But the music last night had felt so good, so right, like coming home after being lost for a very long time. Sarah took a deep breath and got dressed for work. She didn't know what she would say to Tony. She didn't know if she could actually do what he wanted. But she knew one thing. She couldn't run away from this. Not anymore. Sarah walked into Romano's at 10:30 just like she always did. But nothing felt the same. Maria was already there, practically bouncing with excitement. Frank waved from the kitchen with a huge smile. Even the morning prep cook, who usually barely acknowledged anyone, gave her a thumbs up. Tony was in his office. Sarah could see him through the half-open door, on the phone with someone. He saw her and immediately waved her in, still talking on his call. Sarah's hands felt cold as she walked across the dining room. She passed the piano. It looked the same as always, but now it felt different, like it belonged to her somehow. I have to call you back, Tony said into the phone. He hung up and stood up, his face breaking into a wide smile. Sarah! Sit down, sit down. Sarah sat in the chair across from his desk. Tony's office was small and messy, full of papers and folders and old menus. He wasn't good at organizing, but he was good at running the restaurant, good at treating people fairly. I saw the video, Tony said. Actually, everyone saw the video. Do you know how many views it has now? 15,000. 15,000. And the phone has been ringing all morning. People making reservations, asking if you'll be playing tonight. Tony, I'm sorry, Sarah said quickly. I shouldn't have touched the piano without asking. I know it was wrong. Tony looked confused. Wrong? Sarah, why would it be wrong? That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. I had no idea you could play like that. Why didn't you tell me? Sarah looked down at her hands. It was a long time ago. It doesn't matter now. Doesn't matter? Sarah, you're incredible. Where did you learn to play like that? She didn't want to answer. Didn't want to open that door. But Tony was waiting, looking at her with genuine curiosity and kindness. So she told him. Not everything, but enough. I went to music school, she said quietly. Juilliard. In New York. Tony's eyes went wide. Juilliard. That's one of the best music schools in the world, right? Sarah nodded. So why are you working here? Why aren't you playing piano professionally? There it was. The question she had been dreading. The question that had no good answer. She could feel tears building behind her eyes, but she forced them back. My mother got sick, she said. I had to come home and take care of her. There were medical bills. I couldn't go back to school. After she died, it was too late. I was too far behind. So I found other work. And here I am. The office was quiet for a moment. Tony leaned back in his chair, processing what she had told him. Outside, Sarah could hear the usual restaurant sounds. Dishes clinking, the coffee maker gurgling, Maria's cheerful voice greeting someone. I'm sorry about your mother, Tony said finally. That must have been really hard. It was. But Sarah, it's not too late. You just proved that last night. You still have this gift, and I want to offer you something. He leaned forward, his hands on the desk. I want you to play here. 3 nights a week, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. During dinner service, we'll put out a tip jar for you, and I'll adjust your schedule so you're only waitressing the other days, but I'll keep your pay the same. Sarah felt her chest tighten. It was a generous offer, more than generous, but it also scared her more than anything had scared her in years. I don't know, she said. I haven't performed in front of people in 12 years. I don't know if I can do it. You did it last night. That was different. I thought I was alone, but you weren't alone. There were people outside watching. There was Maria inside listening. And you were perfect. Sarah, I'm not asking you to play Carnegie Hall. I'm just asking you to play here in my restaurant for people who want to enjoy good food and good music. That's all. Sarah wanted to say no. Every part of her that had learned to stay small and invisible wanted to refuse. But there was another part of her, a part she had buried for so long that wanted to say yes, wanted it desperately. Can I think about it? She asked. Tony nodded. Of course, but I need to know soon. I've already had to turn away reservation requests because I don't know if you'll be playing. People are really excited, Sarah. The pressure of that made Sarah feel nauseous. People excited to hear her play. What if she disappointed them? What if they realized she wasn't as good as they thought? What if she made mistakes? She left Tony's office and started her shift. But she couldn't focus. She brought the wrong order to table 5. She forgot to refill water at table 9. She dropped a fork and had to get a new one. Her mind was spinning with thoughts she couldn't control. At lunch, Maria cornered her in the staff room. "Are you going to do it?" Maria asked, her eyes bright with excitement. "I don't know yet." "Sarah, you have to. This is like your big break." "It's not a big break, Maria. It's just playing piano in a restaurant." "Just playing piano?" "Sarah, do you know how many musicians would kill for a regular gig? For people who actually want to hear them play? This is amazing." But Maria didn't understand. She didn't know what it felt like to fail at something you loved. To give up on your dreams and then have those dreams suddenly appear again, tempting you, terrifying you. The afternoon shift was slow. Only a few customers. Sarah had time to think, which made everything worse. She kept looking at the piano. She kept remembering how it felt to play it. The weight of the keys, the rich full sound, so different from her cheap keyboard at home. Around 3 o'clock, the front door opened and an older man walked in. He was in his 60s with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a nice suit and carried a leather briefcase. Sarah went to greet him. "I'm sorry, sir, we're between lunch and dinner service right now. The kitchen is closed until 5. The man smiled. "I'm not here to eat. I'm looking for someone. A woman who played piano here last night. I saw a video online." Sarah's stomach dropped. "Oh, that was... Why are you looking for her?" "I'm Robert Chen. I teach at Juilliard." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. "I taught Sarah Martinez 12 years ago. She was one of my best students. Then one day she just disappeared. Left school without even saying goodbye. I've wondered about her for years." Sarah felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. Professor Chen, here, looking for her. She had spent 12 years trying to forget that part of her life. And now it was standing right in front of her. "I'm Sarah," she said quietly. Professor Chen's face changed. Recognition, surprise, something like relief. "Sarah, my God, I knew it was you the moment I heard the video. Your touch on the piano, the way you phrase the music. I'd know it anywhere." "I'm sorry," Sarah said, and she felt tears starting despite her best efforts to hold them back. "I'm sorry I left without explaining. I'm sorry I wasted the opportunity you gave me." "Wasted?" Professor Chen shook his head. "Sarah, come sit down, please." They sat in a booth near the window. Sarah told him everything. About her mother's cancer. About the impossible choice between school and family. About the years of caregiving and exhaustion. About the crushing weight of medical debt. About working as a waitress to survive. About playing her little keyboard late at night, the only connection she had left to music. Professor Chen listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "You think you failed me," he said finally. "But Sarah, you didn't fail anyone. You made an impossible choice with grace and love. You sacrificed your dreams to care for your mother. There's no shame in that, but I gave up. I could have found a way back. I should have tried harder. Should you? Sarah, do you remember what you were like at 22? You were talented, yes. Incredibly talented. But you were also young. You played perfectly technically, but there was something missing. Heart, soul, real depth of feeling." Sarah felt stung by his words. "I played with feeling. You played with the feeling of someone who had studied feeling. But you hadn't lived enough to truly understand what you were expressing. Do you know what I heard in that video last night? I heard someone who understands pain, who understands loss, who understands sacrifice. You played Chopin like someone who has actually experienced the kind of sorrow Chopin was expressing. You've lived, Sarah, and it shows in your music." Sarah didn't know what to say. She had spent 12 years thinking of herself as a failure. As someone who couldn't handle the pressure. As someone who gave up. She had never considered that her experiences might have given her something valuable. "What you played last night was better than anything you played in my class," Professor Chen continued. "More mature, more authentic. You haven't wasted your talent, Sarah, you've deepened it. But I'm just a waitress now. Right now, yes, but that doesn't have to be forever." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out another card. "A former student of mine runs a music therapy program at Children's Hospital. They work with sick kids, helping them process their fear and pain through music. They need someone to perform and to teach, someone who understands suffering, someone who knows what it's like to face impossible situations. He placed the card on the table between them. I'm not saying you have to do this, but I wanted you to know the option exists. Your talent isn't wasted, Sarah. It's just been waiting for the right opportunity. After Professor Chen left, Sarah sat in the empty booth for a long time. She looked at the card he had given her. She looked at the piano in the corner. She thought about the little girl she used to be, the one who fell in love with music. She thought about the young woman at Juilliard who practiced until her fingers hurt. She thought about the daughter who gave up everything to care for her mother. And she thought about who she might become if she was brave enough to try. That evening, Sarah found Tony before the dinner shift started. I'll do it, she said. Tony's face lit up. Really? I'll play on Friday and Saturday nights. Just for a few hours. We can see how it goes. If people don't like it or if I'm terrible, we can stop. You won't be terrible, Sarah, but yes, we can start small. See how it feels? Tony stuck out his hand. Welcome back to music, Sarah shook his hand. Her palm was sweaty. Her heart was racing. But underneath the fear, there was something else. Something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. The next 2 days passed in a blur. Sarah tried to practice at home, but her keyboard felt wrong now. Too small. Too tinny. The sound wasn't real. She needed the piano at the restaurant, but she was too nervous to go there outside of her shifts. What if she practiced and people watched? What if she made mistakes? Thursday night, she barely slept. Friday was her first performance. Official performance. Scheduled. Expected. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through all the things that could go wrong. She could forget the music. She could make mistakes. People could laugh at her. They could be disappointed. They could leave bad reviews online. But she had already said yes. She had already committed. There was no backing out now. Friday arrived. Sarah got to the restaurant early. Tony had put up a small sign outside. Live piano music tonight, featuring Sarah Martinez. Seeing her name on the sign made everything feel real, final, terrifying. Inside, Tony had moved the piano slightly, positioning it so more people could see. He had placed a small tip jar on top with a handwritten sign, for the pianist. Maria had put flowers in a vase next to the piano. White roses. They smelled sweet and looked elegant. You're going to be amazing, Maria whispered as she passed Sarah in the dining room. But Sarah didn't feel amazing. She felt sick. The restaurant started filling up at 6 o'clock. Every table was reserved. People had called specifically to hear her play. The pressure of that was crushing. At 7 o'clock, Tony nodded at her. It was time. Sarah walked to the piano on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. Every eye in the restaurant turned to watch her. The conversations didn't stop completely, but they got quieter. People were waiting to see what would happen, waiting to hear if she was as good as the video suggested. She sat down on the bench and adjusted it slightly, buying herself a few extra seconds. Her hands were shaking. She placed them in her lap and took a deep breath. Then another. She could do this. She had done this before 12 years ago. She had performed in front of music professors and judges and other students. But somehow this felt harder. Sarah placed her hands on the keys. She closed her eyes, and she began to play. The piece was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the same piece she had played that night when Maria found her. The same piece that had started all of this. Her fingers found the notes, and slowly the fear began to fade. There was only the music, only the feeling of the keys beneath her fingers, only the sound filling the restaurant. She played for 40 minutes straight, moving from one piece to another without stopping. Chopin gave way to Debussy. Debussy became Beethoven. She played pieces she had memorized years ago and pieces she had only recently remembered. Her fingers moved across the keys with confidence born from thousands of hours of practice, even though those hours were now a decade in the past. The restaurant was silent except for the music. People stopped eating to listen. Forks hung in the air. Conversations died completely. Even the kitchen staff had stopped their usual clattering to hear better. Sarah played with her eyes closed for most of it, lost in the music, forgetting about the audience. When she finally finished, there was a moment of complete silence. Sarah opened her eyes, suddenly nervous again. Had they hated it? Had she made mistakes she didn't notice? Then the applause started. Loud and enthusiastic. People were standing up. The elderly couple from booth 7, tears streaming down their faces. The businessman who usually ate alone, clapping with his hands above his head. A young couple who had been on a date, both of them smiling widely. Even Maria, watching from the kitchen doorway, was crying and clapping at the same time. Sarah stood up and gave a small, awkward bow. She wasn't sure what else to do. She had never been good at accepting praise. The applause continued for what felt like forever but was probably only 30 seconds. When it finally died down, Sarah sat back at the piano, overwhelmed and strangely emotional. That was beautiful. Someone called out. Others agreed. Amazing. Play more. Don't stop. Sarah looked at Tony. He was beaming, making a gesture that meant, keep going. So she did. She played for another 30 minutes. This time she took requests. The elderly woman asked for something romantic. Sarah played Schumann's Traumerei. A father asked for something his kids would recognize. Sarah played a gentle version of a popular movie theme. Someone else wanted something cheerful. She played a light piece by Mozart. By the time she finished, the tip jar was overflowing with bills. $20, $50, even a $100 bill tucked inside. Sarah stared at it in disbelief. She had never made this much money in tips in her entire time as a waitress. Same time tomorrow? Tony asked as people started leaving, many of them stopping to thank Sarah personally. She nodded, still in shock. Yes, same time tomorrow. That night, Sarah drove home with the tip jar money in her purse. $340. For playing piano, for doing something she loved. It didn't seem real. She had spent 3 years carrying heavy trays and dealing with difficult customers to make a fraction of that money. At home, she sat on her bed and counted the bills again. Then she looked at her keyboard, squeezed into the corner of her small apartment. An idea formed in her mind. A crazy, impossible idea. The next morning, Saturday, Sarah went to a music store across town. It was a place she had walked past many times but never gone inside. The thought of being surrounded by real instruments, by the life she had given up, had always been too painful. But today she walked in. The store smelled like wood polish and new strings. Guitars hung on the walls. Drum sets sat in the back. And in the corner there were keyboards and digital pianos, real ones, professional ones. A salesman approached her. Can I help you find something? I need a better keyboard, Sarah said. Something with weighted keys. Something that sounds real. The salesman showed her several options. He explained the differences between models. He let her try each one. Sarah played a few bars on each keyboard, feeling the action of the keys, listening to the sound quality. Finally, she found one that felt right. It was expensive, more than she wanted to spend, but it was also exactly what she needed. I'll take it, she said. She paid with the tip money from last night and some savings she had been putting aside. The salesman promised to deliver it to her apartment that afternoon. Sarah left the store feeling like she was floating. She had just spent a significant amount of money on music equipment. She, the practical one, the responsible one who always saved and never splurged. It felt reckless and wonderful. That evening at the restaurant, Sarah felt different. More confident. Less terrified. She played her second performance with more ease than the first. She smiled at the audience between pieces. She even made a joke when her fingers slipped on a difficult passage. That's what happens when you're out of practice, she said, and people laughed warmly. The crowd was even bigger than Friday night. People had heard about her. Word was spreading. The tip jar filled up even more. $400 this time, and several people left their business cards, asking if she did private events or parties. After her set, a woman in her 50s approached Sarah. She had kind eyes and wore a hospital badge on her jacket. I'm Dr. Ellen Rodriguez, the woman said. I run the music therapy program at Children's Hospital. Robert Chen told me about you. Sarah felt her heart skip. Professor Chen had really contacted them. He hadn't just given her an empty card and forgotten about her. He said you might be interested in working with us, Dr. Rodriguez continued. We use music to help children cope with illness and treatment. We need someone to perform for them. Maybe teach some basic piano to the kids who are interested. It's not full-time, just a few hours a week, but it's meaningful work. Sarah thought about the children in the hospital, scared, in pain, facing things no child should have to face. She thought about her mother, all those years in and out of hospitals. She thought about how music had been her only escape during that time. "I'd like to know more," Sarah said. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. "Wonderful. Let me give you my number. We can set up a time for you to visit, see the facility, meet some of the kids." They exchanged information. After Dr. Rodriguez left, Sarah sat at the piano for a few minutes, alone in the nearly empty restaurant. Tony was in the back doing paperwork. Maria had gone home. The kitchen was clean and closed. Sarah played one more piece just for herself, something quiet and gentle. She thought about how much had changed in just 1 week. How a single moment of courage playing the piano when she thought no one was watching had opened doors she didn't know existed. Sunday night's performance was the best yet. Sarah felt completely comfortable now. She chatted with the audience between songs. She took requests and sometimes improvised when she didn't know a piece perfectly. She made mistakes and laughed about them. She wasn't trying to be perfect anymore. She was just trying to share something beautiful with people who wanted to hear it. An older man approached her after the show. He walked slowly, using a cane, and his hand shook slightly. "Parkinson's disease," Sarah guessed. "I haven't heard anyone play like that in years," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "My wife used to play piano. She died last year. Hearing you tonight, it was like hearing her again." "Thank you." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. "I'm so glad I could give you that." "Music is powerful," the man said. "It connects us to the people we've lost, to the people we love, to parts of ourselves we forget are there. Don't ever stop playing." After he left, Sarah sat at the piano for a long time. She thought about what Professor Chen had said, about how her life experiences had deepened her music, about how pain and loss could create something beautiful if you were willing to let it. She thought about her mother, about all those nights sitting by her hospital bed, about the funeral, about the crushing loneliness that followed. She had thought those experiences had ruined her, had taken away her chance at the life she was supposed to have. But maybe they hadn't ruined her. Maybe they had just changed her path. Maybe there wasn't one right way to be a musician. Maybe playing for sick children and restaurant guests was just as valuable as playing in concert halls, maybe more valuable in some ways. The following week, Sarah visited the children's hospital. Dr. Rodriguez gave her a tour of the music therapy room. It was bright and cheerful, with colorful walls and small instruments scattered around. There was a piano in the corner. Not as nice as the one at Romano's, but good enough. "The kids come here for their sessions," Dr. Rodriguez explained. "Sometimes individually, sometimes in groups. We also do bedside performances for children who can't leave their rooms. It's not always easy. Some of the kids are very sick. Some are in pain, but music helps them feel normal for a little while, helps them express feelings they can't put into words." Sarah met some of the children that day. A 7-year-old girl with leukemia who loved princess songs. A teenage boy with cystic fibrosis who wanted to learn guitar but whose breathing couldn't handle it, so he was learning keyboard instead. A 5-year-old who was recovering from a car accident and couldn't talk yet but could hum melodies. Sarah played for them. Simple songs, happy songs. She let them bang on the piano keys and make noise. She taught the teenager a basic chord progression. She played princess songs for the little girl until she fell asleep in her mother's arms. When she left the hospital that day, Sarah was exhausted, emotionally drained, but also filled with a sense of purpose she had never felt before, not even at Juilliard when she was training to be a concert pianist. This felt more important somehow, more real. She accepted the position. 2 afternoons a week at the hospital, 3 evenings a week at Romano's. She kept her waitressing shifts on Monday and Tuesday, but Tony had been true to his word about keeping her pay stable. With the tips from piano performances and the hospital position, Sarah was actually making more money than she had made in years. But more than the money, her life felt different. She woke up excited instead of dreading the day. She practiced on her new keyboard every morning, preparing pieces for the restaurant and simple songs for the children. She found herself humming while she worked, tapping rhythms on tables. Seeing the world through music again, Maria noticed the change. "You seem happy," she said one day. "Like, really happy? Not just okay, actually happy." Sarah realized Maria was right. She was happy. For the first time since her mother died, maybe for the first time since she left Juilliard, she felt like herself again, like the person she was supposed to be. But there was still one thing that bothered her. One conversation she needed to have. One person she needed to talk to about everything that had happened. Professor Chen had given her his phone number. Sarah had been carrying his card in her wallet for 2 weeks, taking it out and looking at it, but never calling. She was afraid of what she might say. Afraid of facing all those old feelings of failure and shame. Finally, on a quiet Wednesday afternoon, Sarah called him. "Professor Chen, it's Sarah Martinez." "Sarah, how wonderful to hear from you. How are things going?" She told him about everything. About the performances at Romano's, about the children's hospital, about how music was filling her life again in ways she never expected. "I'm proud of you," Professor Chen said. "But Sarah, can I ask you something? Why did it take 12 years? Why did you wait so long to come back to music?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I thought I had failed. I thought because I couldn't finish at Juilliard, because I couldn't become a concert pianist, that I didn't deserve to play anymore. That I had wasted my talent. And now I think maybe there are different ways to use a gift. Maybe success doesn't look the same for everyone." "Exactly," Professor Chen said. "Sarah, you're doing something now that matters more than any concert hall performance ever could. You're bringing joy to people who need it. You're teaching children who are suffering. You're proving that music isn't just for elite audiences. It's for everyone. That's the highest calling of a musician." 3 months had passed since that first night when Sarah played the piano at Romano's. 3 months since Maria's video went viral. 3 months since her life changed completely. The restaurant was packed every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. People came from neighboring towns just to hear Sarah play. They made reservations weeks in advance. Tony had to hire another server just to handle the increased business. The piano was no longer Tony's expensive decoration. It was the heart of the restaurant. Sarah no longer felt nervous when she sat down to play. The piano bench felt like home now. She knew which keys stuck slightly. She knew how to adjust for the acoustics of the room. She knew her audience. The regulars who came every week. The couples celebrating anniversaries. The families with children who sat quietly, mesmerized by the music. She had developed a routine. She started each evening with something classical, Chopin or Debussy or Beethoven, something beautiful and familiar that set the mood. Then she took requests. Sometimes people asked for songs from movies or musicals. Sometimes they wanted jazz standards or popular songs. Sarah learned something new every week, practicing at home on her professional keyboard, preparing for the next performance. The tip jar was always full. Sarah had saved enough money to move to a bigger apartment, one with room for a real piano, though she hadn't bought one yet. She was saving for that, a nice upright piano, something that would last, something she could practice on without headphones, without worrying about neighbors complaining. But the restaurant wasn't even the best part of her new life. The best part was Tuesday and Thursday afternoons at the children's hospital. Sarah had been working with Dr. Rodriguez and the music therapy team for 3 months now. She knew many of the children by name. She knew their stories. She knew which songs made them smile and which ones made them cry. She knew how to be gentle with the shy ones and playful with the energetic ones. There was Emma, the 7-year-old with leukemia who Sarah had met on her first day. Emma had completed her treatment now and was in remission. She came back to the hospital every week just for her music lesson with Sarah. She was learning to play simple songs on the keyboard. Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Mary Had a Little Lamb. Her favorite was Let It Go from Frozen. She played it over and over, never getting tired of it. There was Marcus, the teenage boy with cystic fibrosis. He had learned 3 chord progressions and could play simple songs now. He was writing his own music, using melodies to express feelings he couldn't say out loud. His mother told Sarah that music therapy had helped him cope with his illness better than anything else they had tried. There was little Lily, the 5-year-old recovering from a car accident. She still couldn't talk, but she could hum now, and she smiled when Sarah played for her. Small victories, but important ones. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Sarah arrived at the hospital with her bag of simple music books and her portable keyboard. She went room to room, playing for children who couldn't leave their beds. She sat with families during difficult moments, letting music fill the silence when there were no words. It was hard work. Emotionally draining. Some days Sarah came home and cried. When a child she had been working with got sicker. When a family got bad news, when she saw the fear in a parent's eyes and knew there was nothing she could do except play music and hope it helped somehow. But it was also the most meaningful work she had ever done. More meaningful than waitressing. More meaningful, she realized, than performing in concert halls would have been. She was using her gift to help people, to bring light into dark places, to give sick children something to look forward to. One Tuesday in late autumn, Sarah was playing for a new patient, a 9-year-old boy named Daniel, who had just been diagnosed with a brain tumor. He was scared and angry. He didn't want to talk to anyone. The nurses said he hadn't spoken since getting the diagnosis. Sarah brought her keyboard to his room. His mother sat in the corner looking exhausted and heartbroken. Daniel lay in bed staring at the ceiling, ignoring everyone. "Hi, Daniel," Sarah said gently. "My name is Sarah. I play piano. Would it be okay if I played something for you?" No response. His eyes didn't even move. Sarah set up her keyboard anyway. She started playing. Nothing too cheerful. Nothing that would feel false given the situation. She played something gentle. Something that acknowledged sadness without being overwhelming. A piece by Eric Satie, Gymnopédie No. 1, slow and contemplative. As she played, she watched Daniel out of the corner of her eye. After a few minutes, his eyes moved from the ceiling to her. He was listening. Not smiling, not showing any emotion, but listening. When she finished, there was silence. Then Daniel spoke for the first time in days. "Can you play it again?" Sarah's heart swelled. She played it again. And then again. By the 4th time, Daniel's mother was crying quietly in the corner. Not from sadness, though there was still sadness, but from relief, from gratitude that someone had reached her son when nothing else could. After that day, Daniel asked for Sarah every time she came to the hospital. She played for him twice a week. Gradually, he started talking more, asking questions about the music, about how she learned to play, about whether he could learn too. Sarah brought a simple keyboard to his room and started teaching him. Basic notes, simple melodies. Daniel's hands were shaky from his medication and sometimes he got frustrated. But he kept trying. Music gave him something to focus on besides his illness, something to work toward. "When I get better," Daniel told Sarah one day, "I want to play piano like you." "You will," Sarah said, hoping with everything in her that it was true. Meanwhile, Sarah's reputation continued to grow. The video Maria had posted had been viewed over 2 million times now. Local news stations had done stories about her. The waitress pianist who stunned everyone. The hidden talent discovered at Italian restaurant. People recognized her sometimes on the street. A few concert venues reached out, asking if she would consider doing performances. Small venues, nothing huge, but still, Sarah was tempted. Part of her wanted to say yes, wanted to prove that she could still perform at that level. But another part of her, a bigger part, knew that her path was different now. She didn't need concert halls to feel successful. She had something better. She had connection, community, purpose. One evening at Romano's, after finishing her performance, Sarah was approached by a well-dressed woman in her 40s. The woman had been sitting alone all evening, listening intently to every piece Sarah played. "Excuse me," the woman said. "I'm Catherine Mills. I'm a music producer. I work with recording artists." Sarah felt her stomach flutter with nervousness. "It's nice to meet you. I've been watching your videos online. I came here tonight to hear you in person. You're exceptional. Have you ever thought about recording an album?" An album. The words seemed to hang in the air. It was the kind of opportunity Sarah had dreamed about when she was 22. The kind of thing that would have sent her younger self into ecstatic excitement. "I'm not sure that's something I'm interested in right now," Sarah said carefully. Catherine looked surprised. "Really, why not?" "I'm happy with what I'm doing. I play here 3 nights a week. I work with sick children at the hospital. I'm using my music in ways that feel meaningful to me. I don't know if I want to change that. But you could reach so many more people with recordings. Your music could help people all over the world." Sarah thought about that. It was true. But it was also true that there was something special about live music. About seeing the faces of people as they listened. About knowing exactly who you were playing for and why. "I appreciate the offer," Sarah said, "but I like my life the way it is right now." Catherine handed her a business card anyway. "If you change your mind, call me. The offer stands." After Catherine left, Sarah sat at the piano for a few minutes thinking. A year ago, she would have been terrified to turn down such an opportunity. She would have thought she was making another mistake, closing another door. But now she understood something important. There were many ways to be successful, many ways to use a gift, and success didn't always mean fame or money or recognition. Sometimes it just meant doing work you loved, work that mattered. Tony came over and sat next to her on the bench. I heard that conversation. You sure about turning her down? Yeah, Sarah said. I'm sure. Good, I'm glad. Tony smiled. You know what? When you first started working here, I thought you were just a quiet girl who showed up on time and did her job. I never imagined you had all this inside you. This talent, this story. I didn't imagine it either, Sarah admitted. I thought that part of my life was over. What changed your mind? What made you finally play that night? Sarah thought about it. I think I just got tired of hiding. Tired of being invisible. Tired of pretending I was someone I wasn't. Well, you're definitely not invisible anymore. That was true, but Sarah realized she didn't want to be completely visible either. She didn't want fame or crowds or attention for its own sake. She just wanted to be seen for who she really was, by the people who mattered. The elderly couple who requested their wedding song every week. The families at the hospital who thanked her for bringing joy to their children. Maria and Tony and Professor Chen. People who knew her story and valued her not despite her detours but because of them. Winter came. The restaurant put up holiday decorations. Sarah learned Christmas carols and played them for delighted customers. At the hospital, she organized a small concert for the children who were well enough to attend. Emma played jingle bells on the keyboard. Marcus played guitar accompaniment to a carol. Even little Lily, who still barely spoke, hummed along to Silent Night. Daniel had improved. The treatments were working. He was going home for Christmas. On his last day at the hospital before the holiday, he played a simple piece for Sarah. Something she had taught him. He played it perfectly, his hands steady, his face concentrated and proud. You're a real pianist now, Sarah told him. Like you, Daniel said. Like me. On Christmas Eve, Romano's was closed. Sarah spent the evening in her new apartment, the bigger one with room for a piano. She had finally bought it. A beautiful upright piano, rich mahogany wood with a tone that made her heart sing every time she played it. She played for hours that night. Not for anyone else, just for herself. She played all the pieces she loved, the ones she had learned as a child, the ones from Juilliard, the new ones she had discovered in the past few months. She played until her fingers were tired and her heart was full. As she played, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The girl who loved music. The young woman at Juilliard. The daughter caring for her dying mother. The invisible waitress. And now this new version of herself. Someone who had taken a detour and found something better than the original destination. Sarah realized she wasn't sad anymore about the life she didn't have. The concert career she never pursued. The fame she never achieved. Those things had never been meant for her. Her path had always been different, harder, but also richer in ways she couldn't have imagined at 22. She had learned that success wasn't about following one specific path. It was about being brave enough to follow your own path, even when it looked different from what you expected, even when it took you through dark places, even when you had to start over. On New Year's Eve, Sarah played at Romano's for a packed house. People were celebrating, dressed up, full of hope for the coming year. She played until midnight. When the clock struck 12, she played Auld Lang Syne while everyone sang along, off-key and joyful. After the restaurant closed, after everyone left, Sarah sat at the piano one more time. She played the piece that had started everything, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The piece she had played that night when she thought no one was watching. The piece that had changed her life. But this time she played it differently. With more confidence, more peace, more acceptance of who she was and who she had become. The music poured out of her, not from a place of loss and longing, but from a place of gratitude and wholeness. She was no longer the waitress everyone ignored. She was no longer invisible. She was Sarah Martinez, pianist, teacher, healer, exactly where she was meant to be, not in spite of her journey, but because of it. And as the last notes faded into the empty restaurant, Sarah smiled. She was finally home.